My guest today carries one of the, if not the most recognizable names in Galesburg sports history. But Taylor Thiel didn't just rest on having a famous last name. Like his grandfather John, father Zack, Uncle Mark, Taylor etched his own name in Silver Streak's lore. Taylor Thiel was a starter and major contributor on the state runner-up 1997-98 Silver Streaks, widely regarded as one of the best teams in the storied history of Galesburg basketball. A modest scorer, a deadly three-point shooter, and a team leader on and off the court. His coach Mike Miller says the 98 Streaks would not have been the team they were without Taylor Thiel, and that's a thought echoed by the star of the team, Joey Range. We'll dig into that magical 98 season in a minute here. But Taylor was more than just a basketball player. He was a 3-year letter winner for the Streaks baseball team and also a member of the 94 GHS Hall of Fame boys golf team. He went on to be a Division III All-American catcher at Monmouth College, setting single season and all-time records for home runs, a career which landed him enshrinement into the Fighting Scots M Club Hall of Fame. A Texas resident since 2006, Taylor now resides in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex area, where he's a senior market sales agent for Homeward, a private equity real estate company. He joins me today from his home in Midlothian, Texas. Taylor, welcome to Galesburg In Focus.
Hi, Jay. Thanks for having me.
So tell me about, let's start with the family heritage. You know,
Sure.
Did you feel any pressure being a Thiel? I mean, you were playing in a gym that carried your last name.
I think back to it, and I think even during the season, we knew we were good. And then when I got to the varsity level, the gym was renamed in '92, so I didn't get up there until the 96, 97 season, as far as the varsity level. So I think I remember, initially there was an article written about, hey, the Thiel names bringing in the PA system again, and they did a nice little article on that. But just being around it and being around my family, the Thiel, the competitiveness of it all, it was special, but it didn't add any pressure to me, because I looked at it as, hey, that was what my grandfather accomplished. My dad was fortunate enough to play for him. My uncle was fortunate enough to play for him. And I was just glad to, be able to do it. Obviously it holds a special meaning playing in Thiel Gym with the last name of Thiel. So I didn't take it for granted by any means. I just looked at it as, hey, I'm just glad to be able to do it.
Yeah. So I think you were probably, about 8 years old when your grandfather, John Thiel, passed away. What do you remember about him?
Ultimate competitor. I mean, I can remember even when we moved back to Illinois, we had been in the Florida area with my family. When we moved back to Illinois, we were actually in the Bloomington area. So I got to spend some time there towards the end with him for a couple of years. And I mean, I can remember just going out to the driveway. He still had the hoop, and he would still, he would put his head down and he'd make like 100 free throws in a row. With me and my brother would just be in awe. And I don't know if it was 100, but back then when you're 8 years old, you're thinking, man, this is amazing. He can do anything. But he was still a competitor then. And my dad and my uncles, they always echoed that. He from stories of him playing in practice, against the high school players. Everything from, he was a good competitor in tennis. He won a city championship in that, from what I remember. Badminton, he was good at. Darts, he was good at. He was just that ultimate competitor, and it definitely carried down to my dad and my uncles, and so I was growing up in that competitive nature as well. So yeah, it was a lot to be said with having the John Thiel lineage, and athleticism and competitiveness, in the family. So yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I think you were about 8 years old. But what do you remember besides him being competitive? What was his personality like?
I would say that obviously you hear stories on how outspoken he was, but I remember him as kind of, almost being just kind of quiet.
Mm-hmm.
He had a commanding presence where, like, if he was speaking, you were listening.
Yeah.
We had family dinners. He was the head of the table, and, our elbows weren't on the table, as we were eating dinner. So yeah, I didn't get, as much. I didn't get to see him coach, obviously, and he was out of sports at that time. But you could tell, like, the respect that you had to show around him. He was kind of old school in that manner, of just being, the respectful individual, and reserved, and we kind of grew up around when we were around him, we had to be that way. So
yeah. So Joey Range tells me that your dad, Zack, was, quote, just as responsible for the 98 team success as anybody. Tell me how your dad impacted the growth of you and teammates like Joey.
Yeah, so I mean, we were growing up at a time before like there was like a huge AAU summer league, all this travel sports stuff that would happen. So, at the time we had the two junior highs, Churchill and Lombard. And starting in seventh grade when we were all there, my dad was like, "Hey, we got to kind of help build this program," and we had been friends and played against each other and competed. So, he would go to Coach Erickson at Lombard, and then we had Coach Cheeseman over at Churchill, and just say, "Hey, you mind? I'm going to put this group together of several guys off of each team, and I'm going to run them to some tournaments and open the gyms up and we'll play." So we instead of getting to high school and then starting, we kind of got a little jump on things and we're able to go compete in some tournaments while we were still in junior high and kind of build that bond as teammates, knowing that we were going to be heading into high school together and having some decent athletes and decent players. So yeah, I mean, my dad, really, he enjoyed it, right? He wanted to, coach and see his son do well. And, obviously when you got an athlete that's known in the area as Joey Range, and it kind of made it, appealing to be able to be around that and just kind of, keep things going. But I mean, I remember going to a tournament, when we knew we were like, hey, we got something special here. We we went over to Bloomington, I think it was, and we had beat it was the Iowa, the state of Iowa. So this is like an all-star team. They're AAU
Hmm.
state championship team, and we beat them from Galesburg. So I mean, that was like right there. We're like, man, we just beat the state all-star team, and we were kind
Yeah.
of like, okay, because it kind of put us in a frame like, oh, we're good. We started that mindset early, and obviously with Joey, at that age, of course, he was a dominant player as he was all through high school. So it was a lot of fun. We got some travel experience early, and just building those bonds, before we even got to high school, I think made a big impact on us.
Who else was playing with you at that time when you were
We
at?
had, of course, it was so the Lombard guys. I think we had Joey. We took Steve Glasgow, and then it was from our team. It was like me, Churchill. We had some guys that didn't end up getting all the way through high school with us, but there was a couple guys in Lombard. It was like Grant Mayon who ended up moving to Arkansas. We had at Churchill we had Dietrich Pointer who did play a couple years in high school. Didn't make it through high school with us, but it was just kind of a combination of like the top 5, 6 guys on each team. And then we kind of rotated. If somebody couldn't make the a
Mhm.
tournament or something like that, we just kind
Right.
of filled in. And we took I think there was a couple times we even substituted a couple people that got to
Okay.
play with us from other cities. But yeah, so just the main core, me,
Yeah.
Steve, Joey.
This is Jay Redfern. I'm talking to Taylor Thiel, a former standout basketball and baseball player for the Silver Streaks. When did you know, you kind of talked about this, but when did you know that your class was good enough to win or at least challenge for a state title? I mean, how early?
Well, for us, it was once we got to high school. Obviously, Joey got moved up to the varsity, so I started anyway at the freshman level,
Hmm.
and we had to know, not having Joey, after playing through summer and stuff like that, definitely affected us. But I think we went like 19-6 our 19-4 our freshman year. Sophomore year again, we didn't have Joey, but we were still good. I think we went 19-6. So we were always right there and competitive. And I think once we hit our junior year and we got Joey back, is kind of when we were like, okay, we could potentially make a run at this. Adding him back to the core to our class, and Joey, I think he'll say the same thing. He loved playing with his guys, and he missed us the 2 years he didn't, 2.5, 3 years he didn't get to play with us. But yeah, I think at the beginning of our junior year, Mike Miller, new coach, came in, kind of changed the tone on us. We started doing things a little bit different. So he brought that energy as a younger coach.
Hmm.
And I think that was a huge factor as well. Just kind of we started doing things a little different. There was a little bit more, you know, energy going into that initial season for him. Have him having a state championship, experience where he went and played for a state championship, so we got to hear the stories on that. So it made it real, to have somebody that had been through it and then with us. So yeah, I'd probably say, the junior year, we really thought, even though, we couldn't get over that Moline hurdle our
Yeah,
junior year, but we thought we were right there.
yeah, that's what I was going to ask. So you go 22-6, I think, in 96, 97
Yeah.
under first year coach Mike Miller. It was a great year, but you couldn't figure out Moline. You
Mhm.
lost to him 3 times that year.
Yeah.
What was the deal with Moline, and what was that season like overall?
Yeah, I mean, they had two outstanding players, and Ian Hanovan and Travis Wilson. Wilson went to Arizona. Hanovan played at USC or Illinois Chicago, and then went overseas and had a nice career. Just really good. And they were coached by, ex-Galesburg Frank Dexter. So, the
Yeah.
competitiveness on that side, he had played for my grandfather as well. Um, the hurdle, there were always competitive games, and it was a decent rivalry when we got in there, but we were just missing just that one little piece, where we didn't have an answer for Hanovan at all times. Joey and Travis were pretty much going to cancel themselves out, but
Yeah.
at Hanovan's level, we struggled a little bit. Rebounding that year I think was a problem for us. So they had the better of us. Yeah, so I do remember, the junior year Wharton game I had to miss too because I had been ejected from the Peoria Washington game. The
Okay.
Tuesday night before was a makeup game from a cancellation, so I didn't even get to play in the Wharton Fieldhouse game my junior year. And we lost by 5, I think. So I was always hard on myself, saying, "Man, I was good for 5 points. We could have won
Yeah.
that one."
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, Moline, definitely was our nemesis. At that time, hey, we need to take this next step. We got to figure out a way to beat them.
Right. So fast forward to your senior year or even the summer, you add a key player. Obviously, Rod
Mhm.
Thompson transfers from Chicago. What did he add to the team?
Yeah, I mean, really, I mean, just a premier athlete, from the Chicago area. He had a toughness about him as well, growing up in different circumstances than the rest of us. That year it was when we heard the rumors that he was possibly coming down, and I think he just had a nice season at Chicago Carver, and we're like, man, that would be if we had him, then that was really getting us excited. And I know there was a little controversy at the beginning of the season where we were trying to make sure he was eligible and would play, but
Right.
once he got the green light, it was like, hey, this could be our missing link. Let's put our foot on the gas here and really try to make a run at this thing. But yeah, he brought it just a different level of toughness. He was a little quirky, he had a different attitude about him, but he did fit in with us. I mean, we were all pranksters. And Joey had been aware of him playing and the things that Joey had played, and he'd been with him. So I think the transition for Rod was easy, just because hey, we were welcoming him. We knew that he could be our missing piece, and it didn't take him long to fit in. So.
Yeah. So was the state title even more of a
I think I
realistic
think
goal?
absolutely right. So we lost the 3 times to Moline, and we're like, how are we going to beat them? We added Rod, and we're like, here we go, we got a chance.
Yeah.
That was the accelerator basically to
Right.
say, hey, we can do this.
Yeah. So Joey Range tells me that the 98 streaks were great because, quote, everyone knew and perfected their roles. Can you briefly describe the roles of your starters, your teammates, and maybe a couple of the key reserves on that team that went 30-3 and finished second in the state?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, first off, when you got an athlete like Joey Range, the rest of us, and we were good friends. We were always good friends, hung out with each other. Growing up, we were together every day in the summer, playing at the fire station or whatever we're doing, hanging out at each other's house, just
Yeah, he
making
just
fun
told me
with each other.
he's like you're his brother. So
Yes, I mean, we had a unique bond, like me, Joey, and Glasgow, especially. Between the three of us. I mean, we were always together. Steve. As far as him bringing in, he ran point guard for most of the season for us. Ultimate competitor, was very, very good competitor. He got the most out of his body, what he could do for a 6 foot, 6'1" person. And then of course having Terry Glasgow, legendary coach from Monmouth around the program, just a great basketball mind. So we had him on the team. Extra, very basketball savvy, very smart. Tapper, obviously he was a great golfer, as a silver streak, but just tall, 6'4", lanky. He was great. He could play post, and he could hit threes. So he was kind of that intermediate player that could do a lot of things for us. Was heavy on the boards. We relied on him a lot to help us with the boards, whether Joey was taking a break or he's out or there's some foul trouble or whatnot. He really stepped up our senior year, I think. And then of course me, I knew my role. I got what I could out of my body. Not being the most athletic person out there, I understood that. Hey, my role was to make a shot when I had it.
yeah,
So I had to key in on, I take a little pressure off the inside by being available, getting open on the outside to try to bring that pressure off the inside so Joey could operate and have space for himself to create. Trying to think, Rod was Rod, just a force underneath, great for the rebounding. Also had a nice little mid-range game for us. Big point contributor a lot of nights. Sometimes, if Joey had I wouldn't say not so great night, but he always had a great night, it seemed like.
yeah,
But, Rod would be able to pick up the slack a little bit on that just because of his physicality, his size, his competitiveness. We had Patrick Hanlon, coming off the bench.
Hmm.
He was a great contributor, very athletic, quarterback for the football team, 6'3", 6'4", nice sized guy. He could hit some pull-ups. He was very creative on some shots, rebounded, worked hard. And then I think even, we brought up, Boucher
Yeah.
from the sophomore team, and he really stepped up and gave us some big minutes, down, from mid to the later part of the season, where we started filling him in more. And he really helped us from a ball handling perspective, from a defensive perspective. He could come in and just, he would be like the little pit bull,
Yeah.
making people work hard to get what they had. We were we had 9 seniors on the roster, I believe, that year. So I mean, it's
Hmm.
we were very, led by experience. It was our senior year. Hey, this is our last go around. So we meant business. You know, like a couple other guys we had, Ryan Wood could come in and shoot it. When we need some, we had the Pew twins. The Pew twins
Right.
were just, freak athletes. They'd come in and, rebound, defensive, and they weren't, they didn't have to score. So a lot of us, we already knew it was like, hey, Joey's going to get his points. Rod's going to score. We just have to hit a couple shots every once in a while when we're there and just play our defense and try to win our matchup. And we were going to be in a good position no matter what. So.
Yeah. I talked to Mike Miller ahead of our interview, and he said that you were a key to the team because your shooting ability gave Rod and Joey room to operate. And he described you as a super humble, no ego guy on a team that had some strong personalities. Did you kind of see it that way?
Yeah, I mean, I was super competitive. I was the one that, I tried to. In my younger years, you talk to people that be like, "Oh, he was wild, man. He would get technical fouls," and this, but I just wanted to win, right? So, um, and then we knew, with the caliber of player Joey was, it's like, man, we don't want to do anything to screw this up, so we need to take this seriously, and help our brother, get him to where he needs to be, and just, so we all kind of, like, as a knew our role. For me, I would say I was humble because I knew I wasn't the greatest athlete. I wasn't dunking by any means of winning it. So I just focused on, shooting the ball and trying to keep my man in front of me as best I could. And, and
He said your
things
defense,
worked out that
yeah.
way. But
Coach Miller said your defense was underrated too. He predicted that you would downplay your contributions. So, but he said the team wouldn't have been what they were without you. So,
I got one good story. Coach Duncan Rigg was still coaching at Rocky, and I remember
uh,
an article came out and it said that, they got Taylor Thiel out there who's not an athlete at all, can't guard anybody. And I think the first half when they played at our place my senior year, I kind of took that to heart. I think I hit 4 threes in the first half against him and got a couple steals right in front of his bench. And I may or may not have said something to him as I was going up the sideline, but
yeah. So, just you talked about him a little bit, but describe Mike Miller as a coach. What was he like to play for, and what made him a good coach?
I just think, I mean, obviously he walked into a great situation, right? I mean,
Yeah.
he was probably like, great, I got Joey Range, and then I'm
Yeah.
gonna, this great superstar that I get to coach. Um, he was younger then, right? So he came in, and I think we related to him well because of that factor. Nothing against, Barry. I grew up with Barry's streaks camps, and
Hmm.
he was great. We just didn't get a chance to play for him. But I think he just brought a different, like a youthful energy to it, and then the relationship he had with each of us. I mean, we'd have individual meetings with players, with parents. So he really dove in, I think, and evaluated us as soon as he got there. And he was goal oriented, so he would set goals, and I think he made it clear what he expected out of us. Which is all we needed to hear, right? So we got a system now. Let's just work on it. And he'd been to the state championship, so there was a trust factor there from us. Like, hey, you know how to do this. What do we need to do? Um, and we just did it. We followed what he had to go. It was a new system for us, which was working. And yeah, Coach Miller was, he was awesome to play for.
Yeah. This is Jay Redfern. I'm talking to Taylor Thiel, a former baseball and basketball standout for the Silver Streaks back in the late 1990s. So, I started watching Galesburg basketball about the time your uncle Mark was finishing up, early 70s. And with all due respect to Bumpy Nixon and Dale Kelly, I'll say Joey's the best ever. What made him the player he was?
I'll tell you, there was just something like he had that edge without being um, like egotistical, like knowing that he was a superstar, right? So we all knew the talent he was, but he kept it to where I think he knew, like, he's like, I can't do it myself. So I think from that perspective, and it really hit home too. I mean, our senior year, you remember the one loss we took when we went to that KMX shootout against that
Yeah.
Missouri team who just
Lafayette.
absolutely
Yeah.
destroyed us. And it was in a situation where, and I can say it, I mean, now, Rod and Joey were being a little selfish since it was a showcase tournament. They were trying to do too much. We didn't play our best game and we got blown out of the gym. So I think, that was a blessing in disguise for us
Hmm.
because right off the bat, it's like, all right, we just played a top caliber team and got our socks knocked off. And we're gonna have to figure out how to play together, better. And I think Joey was good at that because he having the relationships we had as friends, first of all, and just the trust level. We were able to get when one of us was doing something wrong, we could talk to each other. We could, even if we were yelling at each other, we wouldn't take it personal. It was, trying to raise each other up to the next level. And we knew, we had to help him. So him as a player and playing with him, I mean, is unbelievable. I look back on it and I'm like, I'm just so fortunate I got to play with somebody at his caliber. He went on to do great things, of course, at Iowa, and what he's doing now is just unbelievable. And I was super proud of him. I was super grateful for him. Obviously because we wouldn't have been what we were without him for
Right.
sure. But
Yeah.
but like I said, he was the most humble teammate you could have. He was a jokester, prankster, and he loved us, and we loved him. So there was no like a typical superstar ego where I'm gonna score 30, 40 a game. I'm gonna yell at you if you don't pass me the ball, that sort of thing. We didn't want to mess up for him, and he knew what he had as far as the responsibility on his shoulders to make sure he was doing what he was doing to get us where we wanted to be. So.
Unfortunately, you guys had to overcome some adversity that season when Jason Wessel suffered the case with meningitis on Christmas Day. Talk about how you guys dealt with that and how much Jason inspired you, even the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, obviously reliving that is just not something I would ever want to do or wish upon it. I mean, we were at the point, when he first got sick and went to the hospital, we were unaware of like kind of what was going on.
Hmm.
And then it was one of those things where like, all right, we're going over to the hospital to visit him. Well, we couldn't see him. And then it was, okay, now things are getting serious. And then when the doctors are coming out saying, hey, he's got about, I think at the time it was like there was like a 5% chance to live. And then all of a sudden you're in shock, right? You're like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, like now this is real, and it hits you a little different at that age, right? You're like, okay, this is somebody my age, and we're, as much as we are 17, 18-year-old kids thinking we're
Yeah.
invincible, at any moment it could be gone. So it was unfortunate. Still talk to Jason, every once in a while. I've been texting back and forth with him during the season. I appreciate what he's doing for the radio station and following the girls and the boys. But yeah, he was definitely, for that time, at that time, going to see him at the hospital, and then having, we actually, went into the hospital to tell him goodbye at one point. So
Yeah.
it left a mark on us all for sure. It was very emotional. We were trying to complete our season, worried about our team, our friend, our teammate, our friend. It solidified us, right? And it was amazing to see kind of the community come together. Um, what Galesburg did, as far as whether we were raising money, we went on the road and we'd have the opposing teams raising money for Jason and
Yeah.
being aware of what we were going through, just having that support and the way the community really stepped up and all of us kind of coming together. I think could have been, a solidifying moment for us, right? It's like it can all be taken away from us in a minute. That kind of helped us refocus and
Hmm.
hey, let's kind of finish what we were started out to do here. And wouldn't say hey, we're gonna do it for Jason, but Jason had a big impact on us on hey, we're having a teammate that we would have contributed, quite honestly, for
Yeah.
us. And then not having him with us for part of the season, obviously, that's a refocus, and you wanted to do well for him just for what he was going through.
Yeah. Talk about how strong high school basketball was in Illinois in 97, 98. I mean, it was loaded with great teams and players.
I mean, that class, I mean, you could just look it up and just see the names on there, right? Like Corey Maggette, you got Quentin Richardson, you got Frank Williams, you had all these guys, and just like you said, I mean, that it was just stacked talent wise, and then of course you got your Moline guys, and you got Quincy even had, they had Louis Rivas and the Douglas twins, and they
Yeah.
had a outstanding sophomore at the time, JD Sumner, who went on to have a finish his last 2 years at Quincy real high. Our conference was stacked. I think we were voted, toughest conference, obviously, with Quincy getting third in the state, and being third in our conference.
Yeah.
So it was very, I mean, we were aware. I mean, it's like, hey, look at these players. And you look at it now, now that what is it, a four-class system now or for
Yeah.
basketball?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, it's like, well, if that was the class system back then, it's like,
Yeah.
what would we have done then, right? But we held our own, and then just seeing the big names, and obviously Joey having a spotlight on us because he was in that group. We got a little bit more recognition as a team. because of him. And then yeah, that class of '98, I mean, just unreal.
Yeah. Okay, it's tournament time, and it's not an easy path to state. You had to get past your nemesis Moline and the sectional and Rockford Boylan in
Mhm.
the super. What do you remember about those two games?
I'll tell you, we had beaten Moline twice, and we're heading into that sectional championship. And it's, everybody always, oh, it's so hard to beat a team 3 times.
Hmm.
I don't know if we were any looser than we ever were before a
Really?
game before that. Like we were just like we knew we were gonna handle this. We are gonna handle our business. I mean, I remember from the jump ball. You can go back and watch the film. I'm on the circle and I'm looking up at Joey, and Joey's looking at me and he's making a joke, and I'm laughing like on the circle right before the tip. And I just knew, like, from right there, I'm like, man, our confidence was on overdrive right there. That we were gonna take care of them that night, and we did. It was a tough game for a little while, and then we took over and kind of made it a handy game in the fourth there. But get to Boylan, I can tell you the Boylan game was probably, for me anyway, that was the most intense game.
Yeah, that was a
We're
struggle.
playing at the nice arena.
Yeah.
We're close to all their fans are there. It's a packed house. They're a good team. Their only loss was to us. So we're walking in there wanting revenge. Just a dogfight from the beginning to the end. Joey got in a little bit of foul trouble. We were back and forth. We maintained the lead for most of the night, and then all of a sudden we had a little scare. They took the lead on us in the last, few minutes there. I
Hmm.
remember Rod, getting a baseline dunk to get us
I
back in
remember that too.
front. And
That's
when he
kind of
got,
like the trademark of that season. I don't know. I remember that
yeah,
distinctly of Rod getting that baseline dunk, and that was
yeah,
just kind
and that, when he did that, and then I think we had another possession where we got a steal, and then I can't remember if it was Steve or Tapper, somebody got an and one. Like we knew, we were like we got to do this, and like we were pumped up. And I do remember, like, as soon as we won that game, and like the crowd, like part of the crowd rushed the floor, and it was like all the oxygen went out, and I was like, almost felt like I was gonna pass out because it was like such a hard game, and then everybody was on the court, and it was just we were all celebrating. It was great. So
yeah. So you're
those 2 games, I
celebrating
would
and
say, yeah, that game right there was like the most intense that for me that season.
yeah. So that was your so you win that game and you make
Mhm.
Galesburg's first state appearance in 22 years. What did it mean just to even I know that you guys had further goals, but did you have time to sit back and think, we're at state now?
Yeah, I mean, you set the goal out at the beginning of the season. It's like, hey, let's get to state, and we did it. And a lot of us, we're happy because Joey has always been in that discussion as one of Galesburg's greatest, and they're like, you're never going to be in that boat unless you get us to state, and we were able to accomplish that. And it felt good to do that for him. It felt good to do that for us all. But we weren't done. Like we were happy to get that hey, we made it. Now let's get greedy. Let's make a run at this. And so we did reflect on it for a minute, especially after that big win against Boylan, and then just enjoying everybody in the community celebrating with us, and the preparations of making it over to Peoria, where it was held at the time, and it was a fun experience, to get there for sure. Bringing up all the talk of the history and everything, it was
Yeah.
great. So
Yeah. So your first game, you get Centralia, you beat them
mhm.
71-56. That was a pretty easy win. And then semifinals, was it
Maine West.
Maine West? You
Yep.
beat them 73-70. That was a
Mhm.
tough game. And they had a couple D1 guys on their team too.
Yep. The Lucas Johnson
Lucas
played at
Johnson, yeah.
Illinois, and then of
Fry.
course Fry played at Xavier.
Yeah.
Two solid, inside players. Both 6'6", 6'7" guys that we matched them, and we had a dogfight with them. Like we were in control, I would say, most of the game. We kind of had a lead, and then they made a little bit of run at us out there at the end. Um, and I think Bo, I think, ended up securing it with a few free throws
Yeah.
down the stretch that got us there. But another super hard competitive game. Yeah, that carried us into the going to the state championship. So
Yeah. So then you draw Whitney Young. Was that who you expected kind of all season? Had you kind of,
yeah. So we had known, like, this team, they built that super team,
yeah,
to try to knock off Manual, of course, and Manual didn't end up making it through
yeah,
that year, but that team was specifically, put together to knock off Manual. So we had heard, and I didn't get to play them in the summer, but we actually played them in a summer league game, where I think, and Wessels may know the story better than I do. He tells it, but I think we had actually beat them in like a summer league game or
okay,
something like that at one point. But Glasgow and I played Legion baseball, so we weren't even there. Um, so we were aware of who they were and what they had. Obviously, Quentin Richardson being the player he was. Their point guard Cordell Henry played in Marquette, and then of course they had Dennis Gates, head coach of
yeah,
Missouri. We knew it was going to be tough, but yeah, I mean, when you look at it, we got to the state championship, we're playing there, we're like, all right, now we're playing the top team in the state, and I think they were ranked second in the country. So it's like at the time, and it's like I wasn't, obviously we're looking at it going, all right, what are our matchups going to be? Because the whole front line, besides Cordell Hunter, their point guard was 6'4" bigger.
Yeah.
So we knew it was going to be tough. I think we did a good job of kind of deflecting the pressure off of us at that
That's what I was
game
going to
because
ask. Was there any nerves or,
now, I mean, we turned it to where it was like, hey, this is on them because like literally they're supposed to run through this thing and be the top
yeah,
team in the state. And at that point, it's like, now here we are from little Galesburg, we had 12, 1,300 kids. They got 5,000,
yeah.
so we were definitely the underdog, right? But we didn't put any added pressure on ourselves to have to, I think we were as loose as you could be. And I can tell you, a quick story about this. We're in the locker room before the game, and we got, at state, we were assigned like certain ball boys and guys that would bring us towels and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Well, we'd always have our radio blasting and kind of getting pumped up before the game, music going, just kind of trying to stay loose. We had all the towel and ball boys hanging out in ours, and they would go, everybody else is too serious. You guys are having a good time and being loose. So, I mean, that was kind of the mentality of our team, right? It's like we knew we were good and we knew we were good enough and we could possibly pull it off. So, I don't think there was any added pressure for us. Yes, it was the biggest game we've ever played in, and we're playing against the top team in the state. So,
How about in warm-ups and the minutes leading up? Do you think did they respect you? And was there something little going on at half court before that game or?
there's a little scuffle. We like to take the center court, and they like to take the center court. So, right off the bat, there was a little gamesmanship there. I think between both teams, both coaches, we kind of got in a little scuffle there right before. But I also think I had sent the message we're not backing down. So, we were ready. We were ready to go as good as we could be.
Yeah. So you end up losing that game 61-56. I mean, it was a tight game pretty much the whole way through.
Yeah, we
Was
played
was
them
that
even the second
was
half.
that the best team you played, do you think?
Probably overall athletics, like athleticism wise, those guys were they were all, I think the top seven guys were all D1 prospects. So I'm just from a pure athleticism of everybody, player 1 through 8, um, athlete wise, most probably the best.
Hmm.
The best athlete I think I played against that year was when we lost to Corey Maggette in Fenwick
Yeah.
in Chicago. I'd say he was a man amongst boys at that time for physicality wise. But I mean, team wise, Boylan and Moline. I mean, if Moline goes to
Yeah.
a different sectional, they're there too. I mean, I just feel like as an overall team that can play together, they maybe weren't even as good as playing together as we were, or Moline or Rockford Boylan. And that's just
Yeah.
because I think they hadn't played together very long, right? They
Yeah.
had that one season on their belt where they put that team together. And it may have showed, at the end. We all knew our roles and knew what we had to do, and we went in there and did it as best we could. We played them even the second half, right? We were down by 5 at halftime. We lost by 5. So I kind of hang my hat on that. It's like, hey, 1 or 2 possessions go a little different there. We're right there.
Yeah. Obviously second place is great. You'll be forever remembered as one of the best teams in Galesburg history, but how much difference is there finishing second and winning a state championship? I mean, does that always kind of stick with you?
Second's the first loser, right? It's like nobody
Yeah.
remembers the second place guys except for you guys. But yeah, so I mean it's disheartening, and in the heat of the moment, you're very, you're disappointed. You could see it on our faces. I don't think any tears were shed or anything like that by the us that played, because we knew we left it out there and gave it our
Yeah.
best effort and what we were up against. But you look back on it now and it's like, man, what an accomplishment, right?
Yeah.
So you feel a lot better about it. The further it goes, you remember those tough games. You remember the losses, obviously harder, especially that one. Being in the situation, being playing for a state championship, but
But you couldn't one up your dad and your grandfather who
right,
they
right
both
there,
finished second. You probably wanted to get that state title to take family rights,
needed
right?
some bragging rights. Almost got it. Almost got it. Yeah, for sure.
So our conversation's been dominated by basketball. It's basketball season, but you also excelled in baseball. Did you
Mhm.
have a favorite sport to play?
I'd have to say it was probably a toss up. In high school, at the time, I got moved up to the varsity level in baseball as a sophomore. So I knew I had some skills there and could play and contribute. And of course, Coach Brewington was a great coach. And then on the summer program, we had Mike Surgeon, who was a great coach. And just baseball is obviously a little bit different because yes, it's a team sport, but it's more individual. I probably had more fun playing basketball with the group we had, during high school. But I realized at the end of the day, hey, if I wanted to, continue my sports career, I'm probably gonna have to lean towards this baseball. So I started focusing on it a little more, which, in the our senior year, I did have to miss a couple basketball tournaments and things like that because we had Legion baseball responsibilities and things like that. So I'd say I enjoyed playing basketball more, during the high
Mhm.
school years. But then, when I got into college and I did try to play basketball for a couple seasons, just a total different game at the college level.
Yeah.
And then I just knew my skills were leading more towards baseball, so that's why I really started focusing on that when I got to college.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have two kids. Your daughter Kennedy is 19. She's a what, sophomore at SMU,
Sophomore at
kind of
SMU.
following in Zach's
Yep.
footsteps, going down there. And then your son Stone is a
Mhm.
junior down at Pantego Christian Academy, where he's a pretty good basketball player. What kind of basketball player is he?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the Thiel competitiveness always comes out in us, right?
Yeah,
So it's like, I try to tell him, and his grandfather's good at it, his uncle's good at it, following him and trying to keep him keep him in check.
yeah,
We're always, analyzing his game for him and talking, but he's his own player. And I would say, he shoots the ball as good as anybody. I could tell you he's got more range than I ever had. Like he's got Steph Curry range, right? He just pulls from where he can pull. So he's really focused on it. He's really been coming into his own this last year. I've been happy just watching the work he's put in, and just seeing him grow. He's a young junior. His birthday's not till April, so he's still 16.
hmm,
Um, so I think, physically he's a little bit behind still, but he's got another year, to continue his growth, and I don't know where it's going to end up with it. He seems to enjoy the game, and he continues to work at it. So it's been a pleasure, just seeing the growth and being able to be around it. I've coached him, obviously when he was younger, all the
yeah,
way up, and then I passed him off when he got to high school, kind of similar to what my dad did with me, but just being able to see the growth and his passion for it, it makes you feel good because I love sports and I'm glad that he loves sports and it's something we can share a bond together with, and have our favorite teams and have
yeah.
rivalries and do that thing. So
You ever wish he could have played for the Silver Streaks?
you know. It crosses my mind from time to time. How cool would
Yeah.
that be, right? So it's like, if I was back there and we had another generation of Thiel playing in Thiel Gym, that would just be like the ultimate. That would be
You ever
great.
show him tapes or any film,
Oh
YouTube or
yeah.
anything from the '98 team?
Yeah, he
What's
he uh,
what's he
he he
think? How's he
reminds
think that
me.
team?
He
How's he
reminds
think
me.
that?
He says all you had was Joey, and you were blah blah blah. That, but he reminds me every day how I missed the three in the state championship game at the top of the key when it was in the fourth quarter important. So I get that from him all the time, and I was like, okay, here we go. Not about the other ones I made, but the one I missed.
Yeah,
But he's like that. But yeah, he's watched several of our games. I've taken him when we go back to Galesburg. I come back 2 or 3 times a year. We'll go shoot, over the gym. Somebody will open the gym for us, and we'll get in there, and he'll get the shoot, and then see. So he's aware of the history and the Thiel name in Galesburg, and he would probably love to come back there too and play.
yeah.
So it's just that would be amazing, but
Okay. Well, we
distance.
could talk about a lot more, but let's finish with the rapid fire round. I'll say something and
Sure.
you give me your first thought. So, how about Silver Streaks heroes you watched or idolized growing up?
Oh man, plethora of Jason Shea, Elmer Dickerson. That season really wanted me to become a Silver Streak. Loved watching those guys. Hey, Tommy Warner from the guard position. Loved watching those guys play. Ted Trueblood, hard nose, who was there a couple years before I got to high school. Just the history, of those guys, and just seeing those teams that really, hey, I want to be a Silver Streak for sure. So,
Okay. Okay. John Thiel, Zach Thiel, Mark Thiel, Taylor Thiel. Who wins in one-on-one and who wins in a game of horse?
oh boy. The patriarch is John Thiel, and he was the
Yeah.
ultimate competitor. And Mark and Zach will tell you the same thing. That hey, they didn't get him in one-on-one, so probably their senior years either.
Yeah.
And that was a tough feat. If you were winning, he wouldn't let you win. So, my dad always tells me, hey, we always had the debate about a '68 team and our '98 team. His guards, he says his guards were better than ours. They'd have problems with Joey, obviously, but so we had that debate every once in a while. Zach was obviously he got a D1 scholarship. He was probably a better basketball player than I concede to that. Mark, all-time assist leader. He was kind of following in Zach's footsteps there.
Hmm.
But for me, I was my own individual. It was great to have them to look up to, the competitiveness I got from them, being part of that. I'm just glad that I was able to, save some face and have success, at GHS.
Yeah. Okay, rapid fire. What's one player that your dad always talks about from the 1960s?
Oh man, he talks about Reinenbach. He talks about Freddie Mims. He talks about his teammate went down there, Ruben Triplett, and how good they were. Um, obviously he grew up watching Dale Kelly. He was a little ahead of his time there, but being around that 66 team with those players as well. So he talks a lot about those guys and how hard it was.
Okay. Trivia question. Before the state tournament, we did like a little questionnaire with you guys and ask, favorite movies, food, actors, and stuff. So here's the trivia question. What teammate on the 98 team said his favorite food was Jello?
Jello?
Jello.
Jello. Who was our Jello guy? Seems like a quirky answer. Um, oh, I'd have to say either probably Hamlin or Range.
Nick
Well,
Young,
Nick Young. Oh, our
Galesburg's
AD
athletic
Nick Young was
director.
Jello.
He's a big Jello fan. So
Okay.
you remember what yours was?
Food wise,
Yeah.
did I say?
Barbecue.
Barbecue? Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm in Texas. That's fitting.
That's right.
Live that one out.
Yeah. How about favorite high school gym other than Galesburg?
Oh man, loved going to Wharton. Just the historic venue that was, and then probably the Quincy going down there for their intro and being in an older gym there. Those are probably my two favorite.
Okay. How about favorite Galesburg teacher?
Ooh, teacher wise. Oh man, now you're putting me on the spot. Um, I can't pick one. I mean, I was a decent student. I think I
Yeah.
graduated with 3.55. So, um, we had Mr. Spencer in the science department I really liked. I'm just trying to think. Yeah, I couldn't pick one, Jay. That's just
Okay.
just not fair.
Okay. How about must visit restaurant when you're back in Galesburg?
We always did our pregame, as on our as at the sophomore, we always did our pregame with at La Gondola, get some spaghetti and bread in us. So I always hit up the La Gondola, get a torpedo. Coney Island, I got my favorites, right? Taco Hideout. Those are probably the top three when I head back.
Okay. And that wraps up my conversation with former Streaks basketball and baseball star Taylor Thiel. Like I've said, watching and covering that 98 team is hands down the best sports experience I've ever had. And you played a key role in that. And I've had the privilege to interview your grandfather, your dad, uncle, and of course you. And I'll say you've done a great job carrying on the Thiel legacy. So I want to thank you for joining me today on Galesburg In Focus.
Thanks for having me, Jay. It's been fun.
Okay.